Sway!
Hey! Pleasure.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Pleasure.
Glad to be here with you.
I'm honored. I'm absolutely honored.
I'm the honored one. How are you all doing?
Fine, sir.
First, let me just say this is I just reached a pinnacle in my career, being able to sit down with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and you're someone that I grew up in Oakland, California. So, and I grew up in the '70s. So I grew up in the mind frame of empowerment, you know, faith, resilience, strength, honor, respectability, and you have always signified all of those things, all those attributes to us, you know, especially in times coming up in Oakland. You know, we face a lot of challenges. You know, sometimes you look for inspiration from different places. So I can't tell you how many times just by listening to your works or listening to you speak, especially even now having worked on MTV for 15 years and being in radio for 20 years and being considered humbly a voice of this generation or hip hop culture. You know, sometimes you feel challenged and you need those things to kind of strengthen you, and I'll look at a speech you made or something you said, and it's always something I could take away from it that'll keep me smiling and make me feel strong the next day. So I always wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I always wanted to know, you know, I always see the minister on the podium, but who is he when he's not on that podium, when he's not on that stage, and he's not leading the people? And in my research, I found out we have a lot in common, in the fact that you know, you started off as a classical instructed violinist, right?
Yes, sir.
How old were you when you first picked up the violin?
5. I didn't pick it up. My mom picked it up
Uh-huh.
and put it in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
She was a domestic worker and very talented seamstress. And she put that violin in my hand, put a clock on the table, and had me practice for 15 minutes, and then a half hour, then an hour. And she forced me to do this.
Mm.
I didn't like playing the violin because they said it was a kind of sissy instrument, and who wants to look like a sissy? So
Mm-hmm.
I would put a tam on my head like Dizzy Gillespie,
Mm-hmm.
and throw my violin up under my arm like it was a horn, and walk through the black community on my way to my lessons. But after a while, I learned to love it. And when I fell in love with the instrument, Mom didn't have to ask me to practice anymore. I drove her crazy by playing and practicing 4, 5, 6. Even when I married my dear wife, I would go in a room and tell her, sweetheart, I won't be out for about 8 or 9 hours.
Wow.
And it's that discipline that I carried into Islam. When I became a Muslim, I just switched the discipline from the study of my instrument to the study of the Word of God. And that's why today, I mean, I don't have to think on what to say or try to make notes and whatnot, because so much of it is in me from the discipline of study. So I'm grateful for the music, and I'm back at music
You're
now.
back at music now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I have to laugh because I thought I was through with it forever, because he asked me one day, I wrote a play called Organa, a Negro spelled backwards, because that's what we were, a people gone backwards. So in this play, I was a ballad singer, and I sang a song that I co-wrote with a brother called Look at My Chains. And one day soon you'll hear it again. And I also wrote a song after Brother Malcolm's column in the Amsterdam News, Angry Black Man. He wrote an article called A White Man's Heaven is a Black Man's Hell. And that's the way it was 60 years ago. And unfortunately, a white man's heaven is still a black man's hell. And I wrote that song and went into RCA Victor Studios in 1959 and put a soldier in the control room because the words were so hot. I didn't want the man to start messing with the dials. And that song became an underground hit in the 60s. So one day, I don't know what caused me to bring my violin out to Chicago. And after dinner, Elijah Muhammad said, you know, play me something. So I came to the table where he was sitting and I played. And when I finished, he said, boy, you really can play that thing. And so a week later, he summoned me to come back with my violin. And he asked me to play again. And after I played, I saw this frown on his face. He said, brother, isn't that the same song you played the last time you were here? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, don't you know something new? So that meant to me, after I figured it out, get on back to your instrument. So I went back at it and have played with the symphony orchestra in Chicago and Los Angeles and recorded the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, the Beethoven Violin Concerto, and I made some songs back in the late 50s, early 60s.
They were on Billboard charts, right?
I don't know that they made Billboard, but some of my calypso songs, since my mom and my father were from the Caribbean, those songs were on the Calypso hit parade in New York for about 5 years. And I was happy to give all of that up, even though it was the only thing I knew, and it's the thing that I really loved. But since I was a little boy, I've been in love with black people. My mother trained me. Her husband, my father, was a follower of Mr. Garvey. My mother didn't join, she was on the fringe. But Mr. Garvey was big in his representation of the struggle of our people. And so when I heard a word that I felt could stimulate consciousness in our people and cause our people to reject the position of a free slave and arise to really become an independent nation, I was willing to give up my music to pursue that. So one day I was playing this organa. We played it at Boston Symphony Hall. We did it at Carnegie Hall. We did it at the Civic Center in Philadelphia. And we were at the Tivoli Theater in Chicago. But the last time I did it was at the Dunbar High School in Chicago. And little did I know, there were 2 shows that day, and Mr. Muhammad came out to the last show. I didn't know he was there. So I was singing this song, Look at My Chains, and I played my violin and then put the white man on trial and kind of give him a good whipping. And the judge sentenced him to death, and I was very happy that that was an honest judge. I wish we had more like that
more
today.
Honest judges.
But anyway, he sent for me. And when I went to his home, he he told me that he did not want me to play music anymore. He said, I want you to concentrate on the spiritual. He said, even though you are very good in what you do musically, your greatest talent is in the spiritual. Would you give this up and concentrate on the spiritual? And I said, yes, sir. So going back now to 74, don't you know something new? So he put me back in my music. We have an album now that brother Kenny Gamble,
Gamble and Huff.
Gamble and Huff.
Philadelphia.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's the co-producer because he heard my arrangement of the Beethoven Violin Concerto. And from 2002, I began working on this album. And we just finished it 13 years
13 years later.
later. Stevie Wonder is on the album, Shaka Khan, Denise Williams, Kirk Whalum, Damon Marley, Snoop Dogg, Rick Ross. Oh man, we just having a time.
You got Rick Ross on your album?
Oh yeah.
It's like a rap album? It sounds like a...
Well, you know what? It's not a rap album, but Snoop, he played a major part because we talked to Snoop and we told Snoop in our little talk that young people are being misused all over the world by powerful governments that will take the lives of young people who love their nation or love their country and make them think that they're doing good, but sending them to war on the basis of a lie, all because they want the resources of a nation that they could not get to unless they made the leader of that nation a demon and demonized them, then made the American soldier hate that person and then send them to war. And so it was with...
Is that how you felt about Libya, when you went into Libya?
Yes. I was very displeased with Hillary Clinton and President Bush, President Barack, because in Africa, Muammar Gaddafi was the most stabilizing force on the African continent. He is a man that built his country with some of the, great industries that he put there, had billions of dollars spent in the desert to go down and find water under the desert and brought that water up, and the whole coastline of Libya became green because of water and then agriculture. And he had, I don't know how many tons of gold that he had. He was debt-free, owed nobody nothing. And for Barack or Hillary or America or England or France to say that he had to go, and for Barack to tell him he should step down when the man built a country and this country is damn near $60 trillion in debt, and you want to tell a man that's doing something that he should step down for what? And then to have him deposed and killed? No, I didn't like that at all. Barack is my brother, I love him. But you know, when you vote for a man for president, you think he's the power. But he's not the power. The powers are those who drive the presidents, and that's the shadow government that I've talked about in my 58-week sermon on the time and what must be done. There's so much I want to say, brother, but I'll just leave it like that. I'm back in the music, but music has not softened me. I don't want nobody to think that the minister gonna play some music and forget about the suffering of my people. But have you heard of DJ Rogers?
DJ Rogers, where's he from?
I don't know exactly where he's from, but he's in California.
Uh-huh.
And he was very, very popular as a musician, and he's a preacher now. And I was playing my violin at the farm with my teacher at that time, Mr. Charles Veal, and he brought DJ Rogers to the farm. And when I started playing the violin, I was rehearsing for a program that would be played in Detroit. DJ stopped me and said, "Minister, I got to tell you something. Even if you throw me out of your house." I said, "Brother, I wouldn't throw you out of my house for telling me whatever's on your mind." So he looked at me and he said, "Brother, God has given you a weapon and you are not using it." And then he reminded me of David. He said David was a musician, David was a warrior, David was a prophet, David was a king. And I said, oh, wow. Because the first time I was in the presence, the physical presence of Elijah Muhammad, I had dinner at his home. And after dinner, he came around to all the guests. It's the first and only time I saw him do it, and he shook their hands. And when he got to me, he shook my hand and pulled me close and said, "Brother, you remind me of David." And then he went on. I was a very new Muslim. I didn't know that he knew that one day I would sit in his seat like he was a king after Saul. And he then, before he left, sat me in his seat in front of the congregation. And so I've had a great life so far.
Yeah.
But I don't want you to think that I came down from heaven. I rose up from hell just like all of us.
I want to ask you about that because, you know, you have a way of being very relatable to some of the most edgiest artists we have coming out of hip hop, whether it's a Chief Keef or it's a Lil Durk or King Louis. You know, some of these guys who've been in your presence and, you know, out of your presence, these guys are at each other's neck. But in your presence, you see these guys come together and squash beefs and exist in love, you know. And normally when that happens, it's because it's something you sense or feel about the person that's the mediator. In your life, growing up as a teenager, did you face a lot of tribulations and trials that or temptations, you know, like these guys have? What were some of those things you had to face to keep you on the right path? Like, did you ever commit a crime?
Oh, no.
You never committed a crime?
Well, wait. I'm not going to lie. I did do something.
What was that?
Oh, it was so small. I was 10 years old. And a dear friend of mine had a beautiful pearl-handled knife. And when he showed me the knife, I liked the knife so much that I took the knife and put it in my pocket. And the next day, he started asking, they called me Gene at that time, "Gene, did you see my knife?" I said, "No, I didn't see no knife." And I went back to my house. I'm 10 years old. But stealing and lying beat me so bad till I never let that act that I did escape my consciousness. And just, I think it was maybe a month ago, his brother, the brother of the brother who I stole his knife, we found each other in Washington, D.C. Oh, no, Atlanta, in Atlanta. And I confessed to him that I had stole his brother's knife. And he looked at me. I was telling the Muslims about it because there's something about lying and stealing that will lead you to greater crimes. And my mother would beat the hell out of me over the lie. She would beat me if I stole, and she knew about it, but beat me worse for lying. So I've had that kind of conscience since I was 10 years old. So I never got into no real crime, but to me, that was a crime against my conscience. So when I said to the brother, I said, yeah, man, that's been on my mind. And when I saw that you had called and wanted to see me, the first thing that popped up in my mind was that knife that I stole from his brother. I said, yeah, I want to see him. So after I told him that I had stolen his brother's knife, he said, well, don't feel bad, Gene, because I got a confession to make. You used to have a lot of milk in front of your door. You know, in those days, they would put the milk in a carriage and put it in front of the door. He said, I was so hungry, I stole your milk. So that's as far as I went.
That's as far as you go? Okay.
But, you know, I did smoke some reefer.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't expect to hear that.
Well, no,
was it purple? Was it cookies? No.
See, but when I did it, reefer was 50 cents for one reefer. And I was in show business then, and naturally I wanted to try what other musicians were trying, so I smoked reefer, smoked hash, and then did some pills, you know. But you know what?
You did pills?
Yeah.
Oh.
I knew from that wasn't for me, because I never wanted to lose control of who I am, where I am. So I decided none of that would be in my life. Now, when I went to hear Elijah Muhammad, I had a reefer in my hat band. And they search you, you know, but they didn't search my hat band. So I got away with a reefer in the mosque. But when I got converted, I had to make up my mind, but I smoked that one that night.
Okay, well, just for the record, I don't have no reefer in my hat right now, so I just want to make that clear to you, sir. All right. Well, that's good to know, because, you know, I think for a lot of us, I've always seen you on TV or on the screen, or I've even heard you, like audio recordings of you, and I've always been curious to what brought a man to this path, you know, and all of us are with flaws, none of us are perfect. I've heard you say that, you know, and so I think that's part of what makes you so relatable to this hip hop community. And when you're talking about someone like Snoop, who's a good friend of mine, and we pretty much know his history. And I just think it's amazing how you bring the best out of this culture, people who come from this culture, you know, and this culture is what has influenced us the most, this generation in the past 30 or 40 years. What was that influenced you the most? Was it the word?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was the word, but it's also when you know yourself and you know that you are not perfect, it would be the height of hypocrisy for me as a spiritual teacher to look down on my brother or sister because of some fault that they had. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that We are the direct descendants of the Creator. And we are a part of the Creator's nation. So we are the righteous by nature, but wicked by circumstance. So when you grow up under a devil, and he's your foster father, then you can't claim to be holy. None of us have grown up under righteousness, though the Bible says we are born in sin and shaped in iniquity. We've come up under the most murderous people on our planet. We are the victims of kidnapping from Africa, rape, robbery, murder. Then to think that they took away from us our name, our language, our culture, our history, our religion, our God, and turned us inside out. So no matter how black you are, you're a white man on the inside. What do I mean by that? Look at your actions. If you can rob each other and don't feel nothing, and you can kill one another and don't feel nothing,